All right, welcome. We are here to talk about AI in manufacturing. I'm Nathan Lesnowski from Concurrency, and we're going to go through a lot of use cases today. This has been an awesome year. The amount of momentum that exists behind AI making a difference in manufacturing is palpable. Just this week, this is like I think at least the 10th thing that I've done in terms of meeting with the community on this topic, from hundreds of people to this. It's awesome. So we are going to be talking about AI in manufacturing and how you can make a difference in it. What a opportunity we have right now to truly connect technology to the mission of our business. So hang on to your seats and ask questions throughout this in the chat. Amy might be able to help me a little bit with some prompts if I have those, and I'll try my best to answer them either throughout or during at the end of the conversation. So get those questions ready, and happy to dig into any level of depth that you want and go from there. So, all right, what is happening out there? Well, in order to know what's happening out there, we have to start by understanding what happened in the past. And if you think about the past, we sometimes measure that in human impact, we measure it in production, but what this shows is the impact on GDP. So you think about different inventions that have happened over time that have impacted the manufacturing industry, you might be surprised to see that things like the printing press or steam engines or the telegraph didn't do a lot for actually increasing GDP in inflation-adjusted dollars. It's sort of surprising, don't you think? It's like, whoa, I kind of thought those would have maybe impacted us more in the context of production, but it really didn't. It impacted us in society in a dramatic way, but not in the context of production. If you look, however, at the advent of the mass production on the assembly line and transportation, you see dramatic changes in how we're able to produce more goods and services for our customers that are aligned to their needs. But what you also saw during those moments was a dramatic change in the way that people engage within those production processes. So if you think about what happened to people before the mass production and after mass production, the jobs changed dramatically. People were more craftspeople, they were able to produce things individually, but they also were individually produced, which led to quality problems and other things. You went into the mass production line and you normalized production, you reduced costs, but you also had people that sort of function as cogs in the wheel. You also moved into flight. You moved into a pattern where you could ship and produce things all over the world. There's good things and bad things about that, but it changed the way that we produced within our society and the way we ship things and delivered things to customers, and just the way that we were able to acquire goods. Then, in my lifetime, sorry, I wasn't around at the advent of flight. Maybe some of you were, but in my lifetime, we had the advent of the PC, the advent of internet, and the smartphone. And all those changed my life dramatically. I'm sure they changed yours dramatically in good ways and bad ways. They enable us to access goods and services. They enable us to produce more. They enable us to create more, but also they monopolize a lot of our life and change the way that we act in and around people, change the way our interpersonal relationships work, and change the way I think about myself. And all that's part of this picture. So as we go through this journey today, talking about AI in manufacturing, I want you to think about it in two contexts. A, how do I serve the mission of my business in producing, driving revenue, operational savings, but also how do I unite that to the way that I help people in my organization to make that journey? So we're going to do two things in this conversation today. The first thing we're going to do is frame up the journey. And some of this is you may have seen before, some of you may not have seen before. This is a really contextualized way in the manufacturing space to be able to show how manufacturers are making their way through the AI journey and how they're taking advantage of these capabilities in their business. Then I'm going to show you companies that are taking advantage of these capabilities today. What are they doing? How have people built some of these opportunities that are available to them and brought them to market? And I'm going to go through a multitude of different examples. So keep your attention taut. We're going to go through lots of different things. And then I'll show you how to take action. So the first thing I want you to think about is that there's really two domains for you to consider in the context of manufacturing. The first is there's commodity, and then there's mission driven. Commodity is everything, every person within your organization being lifted up to be able to create more. Think about it as the spell check of AI, right? So what would you do without spell check right now? You would have a thesaurus and a dictionary sitting next to your computer when you wrote emails just so you could spell things right. And you probably still wouldn't spell things right. I know I wouldn't. But it's a very sort of minimal version of what AI can look like, in the sense that I've forgotten that I even use it. Commodity AI is this idea that everything I do can be done faster when I start to enable the human person with an ability to delegate or leverage AI tools that create value in the world. So commodity AI, such as Microsoft M365 Copilot, are areas where we can create opportunities for each person to be able to leverage AI as an assistant to them. We'll talk about what that means, and I'll show you a couple examples. The second domain is mission driven, and this is truly where we are creating company-specific opportunities to drive value, either creating new revenue or operational savings and building opportunity within the context of accounts. We're driving these opportunities because it allows a company to execute on their strategic plan. You don't create mission-driven opportunities to not meet your strategic plan. You build a strategic plan, and then you leverage those to be able to create that goods within the world. So we'll show you examples of those as well. But before I do that, I want to hit common concerns that exist as manufacturers have been adapting and adopting AI capabilities. Each of these are ones that most manufacturers are running into, and ones that there's resolutions to. So the first of these is this idea around data privacy. Most companies come to the table and they say, wait, like, once I start using AI, does this all of a sudden start becoming everybody's data? Like, is my manufacturing formula, the schema, the data that's centric to me, all of a sudden becomes something everybody else has access to? And there's good reason to care about that, because if you're using ChatGPT publicly or you're putting things into Google, all of a sudden it becomes something that's marketed to you. Everybody's had the experience of typing something in Google and then being like, look, I don't need to know about this Disney vacation. Like, I was just checking out where someone else was going. Stop trying to market me the Disney vacation, please. Like, this data privacy concern is an issue. However, everything we talk about today is using a private instance. So we're using private instances living on Azure, M365, where your data is your data. It is no one else's data but yours. And that's a really important thing to be able to convey across the organization. The second thing is data readiness. Data readiness is not a monolithic thing. Sometimes people use it as a cop-out, like, my data is not ready. Like, your data may not be ready for certain use cases. And if it's not, that gives us an ability to go chart the course to be able to accomplish getting the data ready for that use case. So we start with use case first, focus on the value, and then map readiness of data against that value you're trying to drive so you can intentionally work toward a goal. Human displacement, we started to hit on that at the beginning. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more at the tail end of this conversation. AI is a force multiplier. Disruption itself is an old topic. As we showed earlier, you see people go through technology transitions a lot in their lifetime and across the ages that we've been in existence. This is an opportunity for us to train and engage people in a really significant transformation, but one that is something that's tangible to people and they can take advantage of. So we'll talk more about that. The second biggest thing that most companies run into is things like quality and hallucination. Like, what if the AI gets it wrong? What do I do about that problem? That is the basis of testability of applications. It's what's necessary for us to build, as we build platforms, for us to be able to measure it and know that it's successful. Interestingly enough, what I find is that most things we build AI around, when they were only human processes, they weren't measuring in the first place. They didn't know if the humans were answering the questions right. They didn't know if their demand forecast was accurate. They are not measuring it against reality. This is an opportunity to be able to build that into everything that we do, and then to validate that the answers that are being produced are accurate by building in hallucination and protection, by building in measurability, by testing it against and continuously improving our output. And then finally, the ideas around bias. This comes in all sorts of different places that you wouldn't expect, but it's a very necessary aspect of understanding. Really, what this comes down to is data. Understanding the data that you're using, the use cases you're using it for, and then it's being implemented in a way that has the necessary guardrails and controls to be able to outcome in the right kinds of ways. So we have to manage and understand our end in mind, in a sense. So truly going to the idea of an end in mind, where we want companies to land after they go through things like envisioning and planning is a value analysis. We want them to know what is the mission of my business and how does AI serve it and what scenarios help me accomplish that mission. So these are examples of those value opportunities that exist within businesses to be able to drive that kind of opportunity within the organization. You're articulating them, you're selecting them, you're putting them into categories, you're determining if it's operational savings or revenue or both. You're figuring out how hard it is. And sometimes the thing that's your moonshot isn't the first thing you do. Maybe you just want to get the rocket off the ground and validate it gets into the atmosphere. Like you're doing something simple to do something hard. Sometimes the hard thing is what you start on real readily, but you do it in incremental steps. This is all the things you have to plan through to be able to get to a point where you're driving value. But the value exists. You just have to open up the box and figure it out. So we're going to talk through some examples now, and I'm going to show commodity examples first, and then I'm going to go into mission-driven examples. So some examples of commodity AI for every person. What does this mean? Finding answers that you have questions to. Summarizing meetings, probably my favorite feature. I'll show you that later. Doing creative work, like getting me started doing something, writing that first word. Analytical activities like Excel Copilot, when you're stacking things and grouping them and figuring out pivots. Planning the day. You just returned from vacation and you're saying, hey, what happened while I was gone? What meetings that got scheduled that I need to be aware of? What's happening this rest of this week? Am I missing a meeting? Or has this meeting been scheduled with the customer? All things that you can ask Copilot to answer for you. Or even admin tasks that you're performing regularly that you want to delegate to an AI agent. So one of my colleagues has a term, never create a draft again. This is this idea of having Copilot be an asset to start that first word. It's always the hardest one to write, get you down the road. Now, it's interesting, this particular space, because we all know people that use ChatGPT to write their blogs for them or their LinkedIn for them. And I kind of loathe it, like in a sense, because you can always kind of tell that they did that. And there's a sense of like authenticity that you want in these things. But there's also a lot of things you do where you're like, screw authenticity. Like, I just want a statement of work written. I want a functional document written on our policy. I want to articulate when you should leave the office or come in the office, or what you do when you leave to shut off all the lights. Like, this isn't something I need to be particularly authentic about. Like, I just need a document that says it. And using Copilot to be able to do that drafting is a great time saver and a great opportunity for us to get down the road. And then even things that you are like just trying to do that are very authentic. Maybe I just need some ideas to prompt me, get me off the ground. This Copilot's a great way to kind of start down that journey. Same kind of idea in the context of presentations, being able to gather facts that you need in those presentations, get you started. One of my colleagues, Brian, likes to use Copilot to like compare architectures. I'm already making a slide for it. Maybe I just want someone to start me on like, what's the difference between these two architectures? And then I can start editing as I go. Is it going to be the most beautiful slide you've ever made? My experience right now, no, but it is a great way for you to get started. So you don't have to like think about every single prompt initially on your own. Another example that I think is just, this is by far my favorite thing I'm using with Copilot right now, is this idea of meeting summaries, the idea of what happened in the meeting, what are the notes that occurred, what tasks happened, and then being able to ask questions of the meeting, like what was the tone of the meeting? Like that's something that you would normally ask a human, right? Like how did it go? Right? Question we always ask, we're like, how'd that meeting go? What was the result? I'm always asking my colleagues to answer questions about meetings that I wasn't in. Like now I can ask Copilot, turn on meeting transcription, turn on recording, and I can ask Copilot about the meeting that they were in to be able to give me a summary to know like what occurred, how did it go, what were the action items, anything I need to be aware of. Something I use all the time now is like people just schedule me back to back. So I'll join meetings and be like, tell me what happened in the last 5 minutes. Like, and it's funny because you always see like people joked about their dogs. And then you see the things that you actually missed in the meeting. And it's great because you get to this position where like you actually have some functional forward movement. And you can like now participate in the meeting without people having to catch you up. Even the ideas around tone, like as you can see in that text there, like the tone was professional and collaborative. They did not have to resolve any conflicts. Like that really hit the nail on the head for me. Like I didn't have to have anything else. So I find this to be an imperative feature. I hate taking notes. The function of something taking notes for me is fantastic. What have we learned from earliest Copilot users? People don't want to give it up. That's really the net of it. What I've found as a practical Copilot user is there's certain things I love. There's certain things that are just okay. And there's certain things that like just aren't totally baked yet. And that's just the reality of something like this. It is a true Copilot. It is not an autopilot yet. It's not a true autonomous agent that's going to go out and like be a 10x multiplier yet, but it will be. And right now it's maybe a 1.5x multiplier, which is still a huge burst and a benefit. If you want to learn more about like things I love about Copilot and things I don't love about Copilot, check out my AI newsletter from 2 weeks ago where I hit that topic. So you can find that on LinkedIn and get some more content on that. Okay, so we could go into like Copilot use cases and commodity use cases all day. I guess one more thing on commodity is that Copilot is not the only example of commodity that you're going to find. Like realize that like AI capabilities are going to light up in most of the platforms that you use, and you're going to adopt them as an AI practitioner in a lot of things that you're taking advantage of. Okay, so now we're going to go through a multitude of scenarios being used in customers today and ways that they've taken advantages to build value in their direct organizations. So things you need to think about in this space. If you are thinking about GPT-driven models, there's a lot of value here. Things like service request automation, any kind of customer service scenario, huge opportunity for GPT-driven conversations to drive value. Service status, where's my truck, where's my thing? Interaction acceleration, like quoting. One of our bigger case studies is driving quoting down, driving quoting into a level where like any kind of quote you produce can be delivered to a customer faster. Data mining and insights, asking questions of your business system. What's my lead time? What's my inventory backlog? When is this product being delivered? Especially while a customer's on a call or having to do so in an analytic way. And then anything you do a lot, like any kind of processing that you have a person do, a hand processing thing, these are great opportunities for us to look at for AI. And then note that this is just a piece of it. A lot of the bigger use cases are supply chain automation and predictive maintenance, smart warehouse, vision-oriented scenarios. There's a ton that's not like truly generative AI or maybe combines with it to be able to create some really amazing outcomes. So let's go through some examples. So this is one starts to give you a picture of how you connect some of the pieces to do things like customer service or sales enablement. So you can see, for example, I'm asking questions of this boat. What is the draft? What's the maximum speed? What you can see in this is I have a speed. It's found in a reference that is this document right here. You can see it's even understanding the draft equals the measurement, because even in the document doesn't say necessarily what the draft is. There's a measurement, which is essentially how low can go in the how low in the water it goes in conjunction with the depth of the water, and you can see their citation that it's pulling me from. So this really kind of gets across some things that we do to mitigate hallucination. This idea that like it's answering a question, but is it trustworthy? Yes, because we're showing a citation, we're referencing that I got it from that citation, we're giving you the ability to go there and look for yourself. So if a person has a question about it, they can actually dig in more or ask more questions of the bot. I find this to be a fantastic way for companies to kind of get their feet wet in the customer service space by arming their customer service reps or their salespeople with information so they can help their customers faster. Think about this also in the context of like even internal use cases, HR bots, answering questions about your company policy or your sick leave, things that like you would answer internally for your own employees can be done as a great initial use case as well. This example for a company, Generac, they're one of the larger standby power producers in the nation. And one of the things that they looked at using is a customer service bot to help their customer service reps answer questions about questions on the generator. So they call in, they say, hey, how do I do this thing? Like power down my home standby generator. And I give them a process that they use to be able to take that action, as well as the source and did it help you or didn't it help you? So this opportunity to be able to create that value while that customer's on the call reducing the time to serve that question and delivering them an answer faster. And then moving that to even a direct customer conversation. I don't even need the customer service rep necessarily answering every question. Maybe there's certain questions that an AI bot could do on its own. And you're even seeing, I don't have this example in here, but if you're doing your taxes this year, and this is a manufacturing example, but I think it's a good one. If you're doing your taxes this year and you're using TurboTax, check out their bot that's on the side of your tax process. And it's very, it's like pseudo interactive, definitely injects into areas that you missed filling out your taxes. And you can see how even like financial services providers that have pretty high bars are building some of these chat experiences into their products. So moving down the road, one of the things that you might also find interesting is things like defect detection. So this is an example of a very simple example, and then I'll get into a more complicated one later about comparing a good against a bad. So this is a good example of a screw, as we can see. And then as all of us have experienced, we've stripped screws in our lifetime. These are some not good screws that we are comparing against. Does it know how to correctly determine if that's a good screw or not? It does. So this screw is defective, this is not defective, 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 right? So this is using a GPT model that had very little need for actual like training. One of the things I think is really interesting about this is typically to do that, I have to give it many examples, like many examples of what a bad and like a bad and good, right? I have to give it like 100 and 100, right? Or even more than that. With things like GPT-4V, we're seeing that I can do a lot less work to be able to get to that same outcome, where I could feed it a manual that shows the inside of a cockpit of a boat or a car or something, and then it can correctly discern what's happening within the context of that to even give feedback back in that manual use case, where in the past, even early last year, we couldn't do that because it was only text-based. Now we're getting to a point where we can combine text with the image and ask really intelligent questions and have it answer it in an intelligent way. So continuing down the road of valuable use cases in the manufacturing space, I want you to think about this idea around demand forecasting, demand, inventory, supply chain, relationships with your customers, all that's interconnected sort of spaghetti weave, right? We have all that stuff together. This is an example of a company that used AI to be able to optimize their demand and inventory forecasting process across multiple locations in multiple countries to be able to optimize their inventory on hand. So they had to spend less money to keep inventory that they weren't using and apply the right money to the right places. So they saved between 5 and 20% between location, freeing up capital of 50 to 80 million year over year. And this case study goes back to 2018. So this is something companies have been doing for a long time. What's changed is the accessibility of these projects. Like this was $1 million project. Like dropping that down now into like the tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars gets these things to a position where companies can realistically take action on them and drive value in their organizations that takes effect faster. And a lot of this is already packaged. Like this is something we have an accelerator for. We can go do it tomorrow. Like these are things that we can take and accelerate and bring value on faster than we could, say, in 2018. Same kind of idea with quoting. Taking a quote from a customer or request that comes through email, pulling out relevant information, accepting or modifying it, and sending it back. Customers we worked with in this space have dropped their time to quote from hours down to minutes. And the reason why is because writing up a quote takes time. Taking information, interpreting it, comparing it against your available products takes time. Developing that into something that a customer is going to accept and is the right price. Sometimes you don't even know, the person doesn't even know what to price it. And that's even an opportunity to be able to do pricing strategy. So on the sales side, there's a dramatic opportunity to be able to increase revenue by engaging customers with new opportunities in this space. So awesome opportunities, especially in the quoting space, to be able to create more revenue by being faster or more targeted or aligned with your customers, or even increasing margin by using the right pricing for the type of scenario. So that example I showed you was a relatively simple example, right? Like it was like, hey, here's some stuff in the email. Now I'm putting it in. Now I'm creating a quote, right? Like, it's more commoditized. Let's think about a more custom scenario. window manufacturer needs to think about, how do I do custom windows that are a huge part of my portfolio? That's where that data readiness comes into the picture. I need a schema that sits underneath that helps me to build my end in mind. So if your end in mind is this, if anybody's bought a window lately and you've gone to Home Depot and you've been sitting there with a person, they bring this book out and they're like paging through, and it's like a terrible experience. It's not very not very digital. There's not very comparative. They barely know the windows. What if I could take my smartphone, hold it up to the window, it can transpose the AR over it and give me a accurate ability to be able to kind of figure out what I want for myself and then self-quote. Well, that requires a schema underneath it. That's where your data readiness is really important, but allows you to be able to change the game in your market. And this is where you start to disrupt things that other companies are doing because you're able to engage the customers directly. So fascinating opportunities for you to think about how your business goes to market with your customers and whether there's an opportunity to change that conversation. Okay, so another thing that's, man, stick with me here. There is a lot of examples, and I want you to make sure you're seeing all these. So this next example is Heraeus Electronite. They're out in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And if anyone has seen the Terminator movies, Terminator 2, you know, like when Arnold gets lowered into the vat of molten metal and he's got the thumbs up and stuff. It's like when it's that time where like every man in your life is allowed to cry. Like, yeah, that's this. Okay. So they do this. They have like these molten metal vats and they create these custom metal products. Okay. That is not a safe environment for people to be like walking around and like dipping things into to test the production process. This is a really interesting way that they were able to connect their OT environment to provide intelligent guidance of how they did their production so they can reduce the costs of waste and optimize the production process to deliver the best outcome to their customers. So this is a space where like I was at a CDIO event, and one of the companies that was speaking at that event was talking about their AI use case, very similar to this, where like I think you refer to OT as like this wealth of data that like we barely have even touched. Like it's like don't cross the streams, because we all know that environment's a mess, right? It's got Windows XP in it. It's horrific. Like when you walk around your factory, you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is actually running. But realize that data coming off that machine is super valuable. This CDIO is saying there was part of their production process that they didn't understand and had never understood. It was this diversity of outcome that happened as they did their production, where sometimes the process was like 30% efficient, other times it was like 60% efficient, and they weren't sure why. Like it just was like always diverse, and they had to just manage it real time. And what they were able to do was they took some data from that and they were able to engage a data scientist to be able to figure out what that gap was. So in that space, data and data science and AI was a function of, it was like a tool to be able to discover something that they didn't know that was not intuitive about their environment that led to an optimization of how they were doing their production, which was like, holy cow, that's an awesome example because it allows you to be able to actually produce more out of the same factory because you know more about your production process that like these people have been working there for 40 years could never figure out. So there's some really interesting things that can be done just in the experimentation place that in the manufacturing environment that can be of value. Okay, so this is your quiz for today. I'm expecting a whole bunch of things in the chat. What do you think this is? If you had to guess what this is on the screen, what do you think that it is? I'll give you less than 5 seconds here. What do you think it is? Mars, that's a great guess. Tunnel, defect, chimney, wound care. Yes. Yes, sewer pipe, okay. Defect in a bearing. Foundation wall, looks like the lid for a pipe. Eyeball, come on. Good guess. Okay, nobody said colon. I was really expecting someone to say colon. It kind of looks like one. It's actually a sewer pipe. So whoever said sewer pipe guessed correctly. This is a company called Bergerson Knipel. They lower like little robots into sewer pipes to look for damage. Actually, before engaging these guys, I didn't realize like how much water gets lost from cracks in sewer pipes. Like Like you think runoff's a problem, like the percentage of water that actually makes it from one end of the sewer pipe to the other is dramatically low. So this robot goes under there and looks for cracks in the sewer pipes, right? So what AI is doing in this use case is it's instead of the person watching the entire process, it's identifying issues and then pointing the person to that gap in the pipe and then saying, here's where it needs to be remediated and here's where it doesn't. This can be used for all sorts of types of use cases. Think about flying drones that look for damage around high tension power lines, for example, or go around your factory and do cycle counting. Like there's opportunities all over the place with vision to dramatically impact your business. So I thought this was really cool because they're taking the very nature of their organization and force multiplying a person in the task that we're doing. Okay, this example is the like, where's my stuff? Domino's pizza tracker. I don't know if people are aware of this, but like initially when Domino's came out with the Domino's pizza tracker, it wasn't real. Like they just kind of took the average time and put it in front of everybody and like randomized it a little bit. Like here's your Domino's pizza tracker. It's real now, but like in this context, what we're trying to do is set expectations. One of the bigger issues I see with manufacturers, it's hard for them to set expectations with their customers, especially when they have a diverse set of incoming sales and pipeline and what they're producing on what line on what day. And what you can see here is we have a green, light green, green, and then we have this yellow section, right? Which is kind of institutes like we're missing something. We're missing a part. We're missing something that lets us produce. And what AI does in this context is it takes the sort of human out of the loop and inserts a lot more objectivity to when this is going to be delivered to my customer. A lot of times when people have like interruption of the supply chain, they have a person running around being like, when are you going to get this? Is it coming tomorrow? I don't know. Just tell them 10 days. You get this like kind of diversity of being able to answer them. This is what allows you to set some objectivity behind that to be able to be more consistent and also to measure whether your objectivity was objective. Right? Did I correctly estimate? Did I have better customer outcomes? And ultimately, what you're trying to do with customers is sell them more things, keep them happy, make sure that what you're delivering to them is delivered on time and you're matching the expectations. And you might tell them 10 days and they're okay with it as long as you didn't tell them 5 days and you were 5 days late, right? Like tell them 10 days from the get-go and you'll have a happy customer, or at least you'll have a customer that's had expectations managed versus like you said 5 days, now it's 10 days. I just got it now. That had me, I didn't have my people ready for it to be delivered. You set this whole problem up. So this really comes into play as a great opportunity to engage AI. And then this can also be a query-driven experience. It could be like, when is the order being delivered for person X? And then have it answer that question for you versus have to go into your business system and go find it. Okay, so something similar to that is this sort of process automation space. And a lot of people went down the road of RPA, found that like it was helpful in some areas, but like struggled because it couldn't do generalizable things. And that generalizable space is where we're seeing opportunities to gain in things like contract automation, for example. So in this use case, you have hundreds of thousands of contracts that come through every like purchase orders, matching to sales orders, matching to production orders that have to happen every year. And a person is looking at those to make sure, am I making the right thing? Like, did what I entered match what they put in their PO, that what I'm charging them, that I'm ultimately going to ship? Because if I build the wrong thing and ship it and they're unhappy, like that's a lot of problems, like a lot of problems I have to now untangle. So companies have people that do this, analyze the PO, match it, validate it. This is a good example to use as you think about our automation opportunities with AI, because 100% is not necessary for success. I could do 80% of these automated and have 20% go to a human for intervention, and then incrementally go to 81%, 82%, 83%. And I'm winning every single time because I'm automating that process. This is the opportunity to be able to create real value within your organization without having to be like, if I don't get 100%, puppies die. This is an opportunity to create real value. So customer contract automation is an example of that. It could be almost anything in your business. So now, as we've gone through this, I want you to think about the examples we've used. Most of them, probably with the example of like the AR window use case, were incremental examples. They're like, I already do this, I'm just doing it faster. Now we're going to talk about some examples that are in the disruptive space. Like, I don't do this, I don't do it this way today, and I want to transform that into a better way of doing it that engages the market differently. And that's called disruptive innovation. So this first example, this is actually a video. For whatever reason, it wasn't playing, so I had to move it to a still image. But a guy walks around their car, it's damaged, with a video. And then he uploads that video into this insurance provider. And then that video is then summarized through GPT-4V and correctly describes the damage that's on the car. So the rear side of the blue Toyota Camry has sustained significant damage, characterized by deep scratches and scuff marks. These marks are the most prominent on the wheel, blah, 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 right? It's like describing the whole thing and the model of the car and where it came from. This is think about it as taking a task that your team doesn't like doing and describing it and doing it. Another example, this would be like your customer service calls. Record those guys. What happens? Record it. It can actually do the documentation of the customer service call in your customer service system for you, real time. Like, you saw it documented the meeting, have it do everything for you in the customer service call. Like, it can capture all that and do it. What about like taking a video of the truck before it leaves in logistics, or taking a video of the products as they come off the assembly line? Is the sticker on properly? Has it been put together well? We had a customer yesterday who was talking about installation of their product in bars. It was like, is the bar configuration set up right? Like, was this done well? Was the repair done well? What's wrong with it? All of this is things that, like, just to do an AR model, our video model on this was like $500,000 before. Like, now we're getting to a point where this is very attractive because all that prep work has been done for it to understand, in a sense, like not the way a human understands, but like in a more closer to the way a human understands video and image content, to be able to do some really amazing things for us. Another space is coming to play, and I use this, it's totally not a manufacturing use case, but I think it helps you to understand the power that's possible, power of the dark side, man, the power that's possible as a result of building these sort of enterprise class chatbots, okay? So self-service loan application. Why is this powerful? Well, every time you do a loan, you pay about $2,000 to a loan officer to do that initial credit pull associated with asking you a whole bunch of questions. This company is automating that process with a chatbot. They're already live in California, enabling a person to do that request without the need to use any actual person. They're going to do it for free. Holy cow. Like, you got tons of people that do that job. What's going to happen to their job? Well, they're going to have to change, right? They're going to have to adapt and move and do different things and add more value on top of it if they want you to pay them. Same thing with the realtor space, honestly. Like, the whole space is getting disrupted. But this is really interesting because you can ask all the same questions in a really rigorous chatbot. And as you do your taxes, you're going to find that, like, the TurboTax experience is doing the exact same thing. Like, it's very rigorous. It's making sure you fill in all the boxes. It's asking you really interesting questions. And actually, it's preferable. Like, I'd rather do that than talk to a human being in that process. Like, can you please just give me a robot that I can interact with for certain things? Other things, you're like, I don't want a robot. I want a per human. And moving that in the right use cases to a person, or partnering the two together, can be a really effective pattern. So self-service of customer service, a lot of quoting use cases, is really powerful in the manufacturing and production space. I showed an example earlier about a chatbot. This is sort of going to that healthcare chat. This is a company that is bringing a chatbot to the table associated with insurance coverage. So if you think about, like, I've got my insurance coverage. What's the worst thing about insurance? Pretty much everything. But, like, what's the second most worst thing? Calling up customer support and, like, having to ask them, like, is this covered in my deductible? And why did you deny my claim? And, like, please fix it because it actually is covered. Like, all that stuff that we deal with, being able to have a chat experience that's asynchronous, where I don't have to go, like, take time away from other things to be able to answer simple questions, at least, like, what's my deductible and is it used up already and is this thing covered, would be great things I could use a chatbot for. And yeah, you immediately go to, like, wait, what if it gets it wrong? That's where hallucination protection has to be an asset. But then remember, your humans are getting it wrong too. So this is a great opportunity for us to do that well. Okay, so the last, no, second to last disruptive example I want you to be aware of is what the company Brunswick is doing in smart boating. They have a mission of being the leader in digital boating. What does that mean? It means that every boating experience is a great experience for you on the water and off the water. When I go to put my boat in the water, I want to know that the battery's charged up, that I'm going out on a lake that is going to be appropriate for my boat, that the ballast is set properly, that when I left it out there in the yacht harbor, that no one got on it because it was geofenced. Like all these things about the actual product itself. If there's something wrong with it, maybe I need to put some oil in the boat. I need to know what kind of oil to use. I can quickly answer that question. Maybe I want to add on product. What kind of product should I use? All this is a digital boating experience. They even have this relationship with a like rental boat kind of organization that they own that lets you like as a boat owner start using those boats and be able to like go out for the day. This idea of being a leader in digital boating is disruptive to the market, right? It's this idea of I have this experience, this relationship on a continuous basis with the company, not just like I bought this boat, 10 years ago and I never think about it again. And then when it breaks, I don't know how to fix it. This is really their mission, is to be the leader in digital boating. So AI is an imperative part of this picture. Okay, everything I've talked about so far has been like, if it's engaging the physical world, it's like a digital relationship to the physical world. All these are things you can do now. These aren't new things. Well, they're new things, but like they aren't things that you have to wait till tomorrow to do. Something I'm going to show you now is kind of what's coming for some of your factory environments. So you already have probably robotics in your factory. Like automation has been around for some time, but they do very specific tasks. So if you're in a production facility for bottles, you have a bottle machine that just like it runs those things like nobody's business, right? If you're in producing paper, it's just like flying through the machines. Machinery, just in general, has been around for thousands of years. This is now an example of generalizable automation. So this example from Tesla, there's other vendors doing the same thing that are building generalizable ability for AI agents in physical settings to do tasks that are not highly automated. They're like something you'd assign a person to do. Like when you think about like these Amazon warehouses, why do they need so many people in there? Like it's not very automated. They got people running around like a chicken with their head cut off in that space, but it's so generalizable that you can't necessarily take a machine to do it. So they have all these people running around. Now, like they're paying those people pretty well, and maybe they will for a long time. But if you get to a point where those generalizable tasks can be done by a robot that can fold laundry, a robot that can put things together, or a robot that can sort blocks, all these are on YouTube. These are really interesting scenarios where you start to put together generalizable skill, generalizable capabilities physically, and then a set of tasks that you could say, all right, like I want you to fold this laundry all the time. I want you to do this task. I want you to sort things between the boxes. I want you to do this screwing of this thing in. Like these are all things that sometimes humans do that we now might be seeing in our factories. This is not tomorrow. This is something maybe like on the horizon that you might see like 3-4 years from now. But it's still something very interesting for you to be thinking about in terms of the job transformations. Okay, so all this makes you think, what do I do from a human first AI strategy? At least I hope you think that way. And for me, that's the number one thing that an organization should be thinking about in the context of how they execute on their mission. I have a mission that exists in the world. I want to bring that mission to as many people as possible, meaning I'm driving my value, but I'm also thinking about how do I think about that value in the context of the people that actually provide it? And how do I help them with their skills? So what we see is that there's two lanes. The first lane is this idea of mission driven, which we talked about earlier today. So this idea of like things that truly are tied to the mission of your business in the context of the work that you actually do, customer service, building my thing, inventory, supply chain planning. Like these are driving what you do. Mission driven factory. The second thing is that commodity lane. Everyone in your business is using AI to be more. And that's why both of these are united by a human first AI strategy. All of this needs to be done in the context of your executive team realizing this is not an IT project. This is a business project or a set of business initiatives that are associated with the entire employee base in your organization. When you think about the roles that exist, this is what's going to happen. You're going to see this existing state of repetitive work and creative work flip on its head. So most of us, I don't care what role you have, most of us come to work every day and we have these things that we can do in our sleep and we just do them. They're tasks we have to do. Uh, for me, it's like putting a presentation together, creating a statement of work, responding to customers. I just know how to do these things and they're like tasks that I take care of. Maybe someone processes AR automation all day long, or they input customer, they deliver customer products, or they put things together, or they do quotes. Like all these are repetitive work that you do. And this is like sliver of what you do. That's this creative work where you truly have to like turn on the best version of yourself and ideate and create. And a way that you could kind of identify that is like, what does a person do when there's nothing on their calendar? Like we have all these meetings, right? When you have a free block, how do you use that time? That's this, right? The creative work. That's that free block. How many of us are prepared to use that time effectively? How many of us are prepared for that free block to be a bigger chunk of their time and to use that to drive more outcomes working on the business, not just in the business? That's the transition that's scary for people. We had a group at our office last night. It was an executive AI session on a lot of manufacturers. And the person that was speaking, he said he has to be super proactive about people realizing that there's a journey for each of them. And it's very personal to them because they do this task. It's connected to them. It's connected to who they are. And when they see that task be removed, they're like, what does that mean for me? I thought about that application. I brought that application into our business. I do that job for the last 20 years. Like, what does it mean for me? The winners, the people that are going to be engaged, are going to think that this is an opportunity for me to create more. But some people are going to be like, this is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You're taking something away. I'm not sure what to do with that problem. So this transition is important, and it's not just an IT transition. It's a transition for every person. So how do you get started? Where do we go from here? Do I learn data science curriculum? Does everybody learn AI? The answer to that is no. Most of this, like this data science itself will impact less than 0.1% of your staff, if even that much. Data science is not something that everyone's going to be doing. Data science is about a certain set of people. AI upskilling is not about data science. AI upskilling is about everyone using an AI assistant, being a practitioner of assets in AI space, not just a builder. Adoption of skills, not roles. So taking people that are in certain functions, adopting skills to those functions, not building a new role that they're then doing. It's not limited to technical skills. So this idea of like colleges are building these like AI certificates and so on, like I mean, well, good idea, okay? But like that's not what like the 95% of our humanity is going to need. There's this whole chunk of people that need to be more unlock creative skills and other skills they haven't enabled in a while, which is this growth mindset kind of space. So when you look at those roles in the context of the overall stack, you have data engineers that prepare the data for the environment. You have data scientists that build the trusted AI models. You have AI engineers that use those trusted models, the foundational models, to put the like pieces together to be able to accomplish the goals. There might be a little bit like here, which is like people that can put together Lego blocks but not build the Lego blocks. So there's kind of a diversity of what AI engineers might contain. But then there's truly the AI practitioner, and they create value in their everyday work by using AI. They're an expert in the business. They're not necessarily expert at building AI systems. So AI practitioners is where most of you are going to find your career continue to move into, where many of you will then see like these other tasks to be able to prepare for those environments. So all of that kind of fits into a picture. And somehow we've gotten through this in 50 minutes. So I'm going to have some time for questions, which is fantastic. So before you go, I want you to see these things. These are what we would suggest for next steps. So you already have in your chat a link. I think you have it in your chat. You should have a link.
I'm about to do it now.
You're about to do it. Cool. Thank you. Okay. So you should have in your chat a link to fill out a survey. And the goal of that is two things. First, I want you to know if you like this and found it interesting. Like I always looking for feedback. this is something I really enjoy doing, but I want to do it the best possible I can. And I'm always looking to be able to improve it and provide more value for these kinds of conversations. We're going to do a manufacturing version 2 and version 3 later in the year. So I want to make sure that if you have feedback, things you loved, things you didn't love, you put it in there. Second, we want you to be able to make this real in your business. So AI and Copilot envisioning workshops is something we're doing literally all the time. Like I think I had like 5 this week with executive teams. So like CEO, CFO, COO kind of conversations. So envisioning workshops. We can do Microsoft funded use case validation. So if you already have something you're looking at where you're like, I already know what I want to do. Here's the thing, I've already got it approved. The executive team wants to do it. Like we're off and running, but I need someone to help me. Like that's something that we can do to help evaluate that use case for free. And then if you're going down the Copilot space or the AI space, and you're at that point where like you already know as an executive team that is important and they're aligned and they have the art of the possible, but you want to start figuring out the list of ideas, we've done sessions up to 100 people to bring, like broaden the tent in the organization across sales and marketing, and all these different groups, bring them together to be able to have a conversation, to be able to figure out what the right ideas are. And that's been super powerful. So any of these are things we would love to do with you, and please check one. I'd just love to have a next step conversation with any one of you. Okay, so let's go into some questions. So, oh, there's a very long.
So you got a question from Paul here about why do people assume the human form factor is the most efficient form for completing tasks? And we had somebody that used AI to answer that for him. So if you can weigh in on that.
That's a good question. Why is it the most effective human form factor? It might not be. That's a great question. Maybe it's because we have a generalizable ability that machines don't, and we're sort of copying the human form factor in that context. That's my guess. Like that generalizability of what we have the ability to do is like a step. Maybe they'll start replacing those like finger arms with like something that's more effective tool for some of the generalizable tasks they're doing. That's a little scary, like kind of reminds me of the T800 or something, but I don't know. I don't have a better answer to that. That's a good question. Nice use of ChatGPT. Okay, thank you. An answer generated from data accumulated from humans. I wonder if we can ever imagine outside that box. Data accumulated from humans. Answer generated from data accumulated by humans. I wonder if we can ever imagine outside of that box. I think we can. I mean, think about maybe not the, well, let's step back for a second. Like ChatGPT type answers, yes, very much grounded in the context of what it's learned before. And there's not a lot of relearning happening within that space. So the idea that like it's learning new things, not so, right? It's like kind of boxed in. It's in that space. Humans, like you could say, like, is the human context boxed in? Sure, it's boxed in by our senses. It's boxed in by what's written on our hearts. So like it's boxed in by what's the world around us and the interactions that we have. That's a pretty broad imaginative space, right? So I don't know if we're necessarily boxed in. Will AI agents have the ability to do that same thing once they can learn continuously? We definitely seen that AI agents, when put in spots, like you put two AI agents in a game, you give them the rules, you tell them to learn it, it'll run a million times, it gets better as it goes. So the ability to like find things from the awareness around you is something that AI agents may possess the ability to do as well. So I think we'll get to an interesting spot where AI agents can do some of those similar things. And that's, I think, a fascinating future, but not something we have right now. Easy question. Do you need Windows 11 to use Copilot within the OS? I don't know if that's an easy question, actually. I think the answer to that is yes. Thanks, Chris Blackburn. I actually prefer, I'll just tell you, I prefer M365 Copilot. It's much more, it's because it's grounded in the capabilities of the O365 tenant. And I also prefer the Copilot on the grounded Copilot in the web over the Windows 11 Copilot at the moment, just as a data point. When dealing with security, how do you weigh using AI with our own data versus pulling in data from outside sources for solutions? Great question. The challenge with the outside data is someone could change the source of that outside data. It's actually something we've been seeing companies try to hack AI solutions by changing the source data. You probably saw some examples of like Amazon, where like you can see that it's messed that up and other use cases. So the number one thing about building an AI solution is you have to know how you're using the data and where it came from. So most AI solutions we're using are grounded only in internal data. Unless you're talking about like a Copilot where like you're just sort of like an M365 Copilot where you're maybe combining it with things that you can go get from the web. And it's like more of like, I'm giving you information back. It's better than Google search, but it's not like a definitive answer. That's probably okay to go for the web. But most of the solutions we're building are grounded in data that's owned by the company, customer service, chatbots for walking through a process, internal chatbots for specific HR policies. It's all grounded in private data. I generally wouldn't like point that at the internet and say like answer this question for me if it's tied to something that's critical where I have to have precision and accuracy. You want that to be grounded in private data. So that's a good question. Definitely a focus on using private data. Okay, any other questions? Thanks, Chris. Wouldn't that limit you to being stuck in the that's the way we've always done it mentality? I suppose it depends upon the use case. If you are doing customer service and you want a customer service bot to answer the question specifically for those reps or for your end customers so that it replaces the right part or puts the right oil in an engine, no, I actually don't want it to go outside the box. Like I want it to do exactly what I tell it to do. And honestly, that's probably the majority of scenarios you've run into. In the creative space, totally not, right? You want it to expand to a variety of things that are outside the box. And in that case, you probably would give it like external sources. But that's not one where you're going toward accuracy and precision. That's one where you're going toward creativity, which is totally different than the other use case. So. Good question, though. I think that's something worth like. I think that's like a purpose-driven conversation over beers conversation we should have. All right, everybody. Thank you. This was fun. I hope this was interesting to you. I really enjoyed presenting it. Every time we do this, it's more cool because there's more use cases. I hope you have a great day, and thank you for joining us today.